this news happened a couple of weeks ago, but I'm just getting around to talking it now because I've kind of wanted to have my thoughts because both of these guys played a role with the Detroit Pistons. So Joe Dumars got hired very quickly, I might add. So they move on from David Griffin, which I'm happy for Joey's getting another opportunity. But Eric, if you would have told me Troy Weaver and Joe Dumars were working in the front office, I would have called you a liar. I was really surprised by the hire. I want to know what you think, though. Like, what are your thoughts of not only Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver working in the front office for the Pelicans?
Next to the Luka trade of reports I didn't believe, that was at the top of the list. I'm like, no, there's no way that this is real. Like, if Dumars was there by himself, like, all right, cool, that makes sense. Bringing Weaver with him just was hilariously unbelievable to me. Weaver, I feel like, is never going to get out of a rebuild. I think he is just determined to be in a rebuilding situation just for the rest of his career at this point. And even with Dumars, I mean, granted, he did a good job, putting together the 04 roster, but kind of after that, he struggled with keeping it afloat. So I feel like this is going to be a very challenging situation for them. Even if they do get that number one pick, I feel like you got to find out something to do with Zion. You got to figure out a way to keep a lot of your guys healthy and, keep the right components, in position for them, because they were, I didn't think they were going to struggle to the amount that they did. Like, I thought they would at least be in the play-in or like kind of hovering around that area. To see that them, struggle the way they did, even with the injuries and whatnot, I was just surprised the step back that they took. And now that Joe D and Troy Weaver are leading the charge to rebuild it, I don't know. I'm a little nervous about what things go. I'm gonna try to tap in with Pelicans Twitter to see how they feel about it, but I don't know. The Zion thing is going to be the biggest, benchmark to see what direction they go in. The other guys, you can kind of live with whatever decisions they make, but what they do with Zion is going to be the biggest point of emphasis, and I think it's going to be the biggest stamp on what their tenure is going to be like in that franchise.
So with Joe going to New Orleans, it makes sense because he kind of grew up like around that area. I know Truth Over Emotions mentions that. And I think that's a great point. The Troy Weaver thing, the only thing I could think of is I think collectively we can both agree Joe Dumars was not a great drafter. And I think that's where
No.
Troy can kind of assist him in that way. Like
Mm-hmm.
outside of Tayshaun Prince, like there was a lot of draft misses in my personal opinion. Obviously, like Andre Drummond for like where you're at was pretty good. Brandon Knight, I mean Greg Monroe. I mean, I don't even want to like go down to the later years. I mean, I could keep going and just torture Pistons fans, but I don't want to do that. Let's move on. Let's just be a safe and healthy space at the end of the day. I respect Joe D though, man. He brought 3 championships to the Detroit Pistons. Felt like he could have brought more if he would have drafted the right players around the teams that he did have. I think Troy will do a pretty good job of identifying talent and getting the Pelicans at least on the right track. I did actually have the opportunity to talk to one of my buddies that does cover the Pelicans, and they're pissed off. They're so pissed off because they have a cheap owner that doesn't want to spend money because they own the New Orleans Saints and the Pelicans. They weren't so much mad at the Joe D hire. They were more mad at the process that's the only person that was reported of, getting interviewed. And I guess Joe D is like kind of chummy with the owner, friends. So I guess it's kind of like a nepotism thing at the end of the day. I mean, like we know nepotism better than anybody. I mean, like there's tons of nepotism in the Detroit Pistons front office.
Even
For
going back
several
to
years.
Weaver. Yeah.
Yeah, even going back to Weaver, tons of nepotism. I have to give Troy credit. He did lay the foundation. A lot of the core guys that helped the Pistons win this season were Troy Weaver draft picks. Now, did Troy hit on every draft pick? No. I mean, I think the Killian draft pick is probably his biggest stain on his tenure. Not to say that Killian was a bad player, just mentally it just wasn't there. And then you have guys like, a Halliburton, Desmond Bain. Stu was a good draft pick, obviously. And the other draft picks, obviously, like I don't really give him too much credit for Cade. I think anyone would pick Cade in that draft at the end of the day. I think me and he would probably both draft Cade, but it'll be interesting to see what direction New Orleans goes in.